Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. I've got for you what I read in March. There were fewer books than I thought I would read in March. I don't know why. We were on holiday. I thought I would get to sit down, relax, read loads more than I actually did. But it just didn't happen that way. I've only also got 2 of the books with me that I read because I've already lent one to someone else and I left 2 on holiday because I didn't want to have to bring them back with me. So the first book I read in March is The Autograph Man by Zadie Smith. And I have to say I really dislike this book. It's not often that I really dislike a book that much. I only gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I found it intensely boring. There was nothing about the characters that I really liked, or nothing that kind of drew me to them, nothing that I found interesting about them, and it took me a good 8-9 days to actually read the book, which is very rare for it to take me that long to read a book. I just didn't enjoy it, which is a huge shame because the opening chapter is brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It got me right into the story. I thought it was going to be a really exciting book, but it was just kind of a mundane book of people living mundane but slightly odd lives, and the storyline wasn't really very believable, so I just found it very hard. And the idea of the book is that it is Zadie Smith's kind of look into the culture of celebrity. It follows a guy called Alex Lee Tandem who is an autograph hunter. That's his job. He gets autographs, he deals autographs, he swaps and changes, you know, this is his job. So he deals with this kind of celebrity influenced life. But I didn't feel like it was a real kind of expose on celebrity culture, on how we view celebrity culture. That might be because it's a slightly older book and it's just changed a lot in the last few years, but it just didn't do it for me. I'm sorry. However, the next book totally made up for that rubbish start to reading in March. And the next book is Station 11, which is a dystopian book, which, you know, if you know me, are my absolute favourite kind of books. A famous Hollywood actor is on stage and dies of a heart attack, and this moment seems to kind of spark the moment when life will never be the same again, but not for the reasons that you're thinking. Basically, an epidemic hits the world and it is the tale of the lights going out, of civilization ceasing to exist as we know it. It made me think. I was pretty terrified actually of the thought of how quickly a virus could spread through people and around the world. You know, unless you are immune to the virus or you manage to stay in utter isolation, it would be incredibly hard to escape that. And then would you want to escape that, because the world that you're moving into is a world without electricity, it's a world without television, it's a world without phones, it's a world without social media, it's a world that goes right back and you have to start again. And it is a terrifyingly good book. I ended up having dreams about this flu epidemic that was going to wipe us all out, but it was a really thought-provoking book. It could happen, and I think that was what made it more terrifying. It's a very poignant book. Everyone's characters are really interesting, they all kind of tie in together, and it's told in a really spellbinding way. It really draws you in. You don't want to put that book down, and I absolutely loved it. I realise I haven't told you who wrote it. It's Emily St John Mandel. Obviously I'll leave all the links to all the books I've read down below. If you want to go buy them, then you can. They are affiliate links, just so that you know. The third book I read this month is called A Year in the Life of the Yorkshire Shepherdess, which is a lot harder to say than you can imagine. That's taken me roughly 8 takes. And this is by Amanda Owen, who is the Yorkshire Shepherdess. If you've seen her on TV, you will know who she is. She has an awful lot of children, an awful lot of sheep and one husband, and she works up on the moors in quite a desolate, remote place. I was recommended this book because obviously I live in a similar area and I also love sheep. I'm obviously not a farmer. It's a book that I found very hard to get into. The first chapter is not the most gripping. I didn't find that the first chapter was written particularly well. I think it's the way that Amanda Owen writes dialect is quite off-putting. It kind of makes the sentence harder to read than easier to read. I don't think it needed that. But anyway, I kept going with this book, and I'm pleased that I did, because actually it's a really, really enjoyable book. You have to kind of put the dialect thing out of your head and not let it bother you. But I really enjoyed the book. I learned so much from it, and she's so in love with the landscape and her life, and that passion just comes across in the book. And it's not necessarily a book I would read again, but it's a book that I enjoyed reading, and I'm glad that I carried on after that first chapter, because I really wasn't sure that I wanted to. In fact, it was my mum who said, just keep going with it, it gets better. The fourth book I read this month is the Bookish Mama's book club read, and it is The Mermaid Mrs Hancock. And it's a historical novel. It's not the kind of novel I would normally read at all, but I found myself absolutely kind of enthralled with this book. I loved it. It was something that really sort of hit something. I don't normally enjoy historical novels, just in the same way I don't actually enjoy like historical things on TV like Downton Abbey, stuff like that. I don't really, it doesn't do it for me. So The Mermaid Mrs Hancock is quite an eclectic, slightly odd, a little bit weird book, and I liked it because of that. It's about a merchant called Jonah Hancock, whose captain of his ship returns without his ship but with a mermaid, and says, look, this is going to make you far more money than your ship ever could. And Jonah Hancock is annoyed because, you know, he's a merchant, he needs his ship, he needs all the goods that he should be importing and selling, and that's how he's made his life. But then he realises that he might be able to make some money out of this mermaid thing. And alongside this story is running the story of Angelica Neal, who is a sex worker. She is in a kind of, she's sort of broken free from the house that she was in before and is running her own business. She's very beautiful, very attractive, very engaging, and she is someone who everyone wants to kind of be with. It's a story of how these two unlikely characters meet, how the mermaid brings Mr. Hancock good fortune, but potentially also the mermaid does, I can't give away too much, but there is I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it is an incredible read. It's really interesting. The historical references are in there, and you just don't notice them happening, the way that London kind of looked in that time, the way that people behaved, and it's all done so seamlessly, and I really, really enjoyed reading it. And again, sorry, I forgot to tell you who wrote that one. It's Imogen Hermes Gower, and again, the link is below. The fifth and final book I read this month is called P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. Please excuse the look of it. I spilt Diet Coke all over it. Doesn't happen very often. I've managed to dry it out. So this book is the sequel to All the Boys I've Loved Before, and I really enjoyed that book. It was totally young adult fiction at its finest. It wasn't angsty, it was just enjoyable. This book follows on from the last book with Lara Jean and her relationship with Peter, which is kind of an unexpected thing that has happened. And it's also kind of intertwined with his previous relationship with Genevieve. So it's all a bit tricky, it's a bit messy. There's clearly stuff going on with Peter and Genevieve that Lara Jean doesn't know about, but is kind of jumping to conclusions about, which is obviously not a helpful thing to be doing in a relationship. It's a really nice book. There is a bit of angst in this one, but it's not anything that's kind of off-putting. I found that her younger sister is a bit too mature for her age, and I don't know if that's just because she's a third child, but she's only 10 and she's already kind of watching things she shouldn't be on TV and talking loads about sex and boyfriends, and maybe that is what 10-year-old girls are like, but it just didn't sit quite right for me. But I really enjoyed the book, and I'm looking forward to reading the last one in the series, which I've got in my spring to be read, which will be coming up soon. I hope you've enjoyed this wrap up. Let me know what you're reading at the moment, and I'll see you again soon. Alright, bye.